Phew. Thank you, Sheree, for an amazing World Cafe, and I think it was a great way to bring up the energy at the end of 2 days and really have the opportunity to talk together. So I think that was great. I really enjoyed the conversations at our table, and it really made me think about how we can bring that collective action together, and it was a way of like creating a sense of energy and movement forward. So thank you. And I have the great pleasure of asking the keynote speakers, the panelists, some amazing questions, and I have a whole swag of them here now. Some of them are to individuals and some of them are for everyone. So I'm going to start with one for everyone, and whoever feels called to respond can speak first. So this question: as lived experience workers, how do we step into our power? Is there anyone who'd like to go first? Indy?
Why are you looking at me? I'm not sure if I know the answer. I'm just going off the cuff. I think you have to take it. Which I guess is what stepping into it means. I think a lot of time I was waiting to get more responsibility or influence or permission, and I think you have to push in and take stuff. I don't think the system wants to give us power. The system literally exists to take away our power. There are laws to take away our power, so I think we have to take it, and perhaps also we have to not be alone in that. We have to find the people who'll stand with us and maybe unlock the door to sneak us in and create a distraction while we steal the power that we need to make the change that we want if we can. I think that's the best that I've got. It's a bit metaphorical, but no one's ever, in my 18 years, no one ever came along and said, Indigo, here's some power, here's some influence for you. You got to smash through.
I hear you. I think for me, I can only speak to my own journey, but stepping into my power was about facing myself in the mirror, the version of myself that the system had told me and that society had told me that I was, and eyeballing that and just saying, no, fuck it. Like, I'm not going to be limited by that. I'm not going to be diminished by that. And regardless of, you know, how I still, to this day, still have, you know, taints of that nonsense in the way that I view myself and the limitations that my connection with my community and having opportunity, knowing that I could be a loudmouth sometimes and that's something I can use, and just saying like, nah, irrespective like of what my value is or isn't, how much worth I do or don't have, I don't care, I'm just going to do it anyway. I'm going to do it because I can. And because some other people that I know can't, you know, for whatever reason, because of who they are, their personality and their journey. And so I think stepping into my power was about facing my own fears about myself and ultimately just going regardless.
Would anyone else like to respond to that? Because there's a lot in there about, like, that the system doesn't open up like an invitation or a gap for us just to walk into. For me, there's a lot in there about making that conscious decision to step in yourself and to be seen and to do it.
Yeah, maybe, I mean, I firmly agree with my comrades say here. Also having a sort of, I find one of the things that fortifies me anyway is having a clear picture of why I'm doing what I'm doing, like having a very clear vision and purpose, and it sort of gives me a certain degree of armor, but things certainly get through for when the system tries to respond. But having a really clear purpose, but also you spoke about doing it with other people, seeing yourself within a broader kind of a collective is both fortifying but also clarifies why you're doing what you want to do as well. So yeah, but I also think, I was just talking about this before, before the microphones came on, that I'm noticing that it's easier to, in some ways, every year or that I'm doing this work longer, it's easier to speak up because I'm given more authority and sort of power and privilege in some of these roles, and I'm really conscious to remind myself when you're working inside a system and inside a service that explicitly denies your expertise, and it doesn't put you on a stage, it puts you in the cellar, you know, in terms of expertise. That you know, there's some advice I give here, but I'm also just really conscious that, you know, we're literally been put up on a pedestal, and you don't always get that chance when you're working inside a service.
Simon, while you've got the microphone, could I just ask you a follow-up question that's directed specifically for you? So, Simon, how do you keep belonging when fighting for change?
I really,
Because you talk about
I asked that
this
question. I don't know. I think that really. Well, I think the opportunities like this are incredible. I find it quite isolating. Yeah. So yeah, I find it really quite exhausting. Yeah, I'll wait for others to give advice, because I mean I actually do genuinely find it quite. My battery's quite low at the moment. You know, for lots of people, everyone's sort of facing enormous challenges in whatever context they're in. But I suppose and you know, Indigo might correct me, but I certainly know in the Victorian space there's this kind of grief that many people are experiencing of a promise of things being quite substantially different. And you kind of, for me anyway, I revved my engines at 150% for 4 or 5 years, and you know, some good things have definitely happened, and I'm not here to minimise that, but you know, you sort of, yeah, you can feel your own version of alone, or just exhausted, or a little bit broken from these processes. And I would be lying if I said I wasn't feeling like that.
Thank you for sharing that vulnerability. I wondered if anyone else wanted to respond to you know, what it takes to keep fighting, what it takes to keep believing in change, and how we stay connected in order to do that.
Were you asking all of us? Or?
Anyone who feels called to share.
I'm still sitting and feeling really moved with what you were saying, Simon, because it was resonating deeply for me. I cannot express, and perhaps there are not enough strong and fury words for what I think about Victorian mental health reform, the lies and the betrayal, and yet that is all reform, actually. That is what governments do. But the aloneness as well, it's not, I think, like I wonder, I think about myself, I used to go to conferences a lot, and I'd see consumer speakers get up on stage like Mary Hagan or Kath Roper, and I'd be totally fangirling, like, oh, you're amazing, I want to be you, I love you, have like consumer crushes on everyone. And but we see, you know, and I think about when I get up and talk, and I try to bring the very best of me that I can in that moment, and yet, you know, I'm not always the jolly, strong, you know, person that you see on the stage. I spent a lot of my life lying on the sofa, staring at the wall, dissociating with my heart breaking, you know, feeling really alone. That's probably much more the reality of my life than me going around doing, you know, radical abolitionist work. But so maybe, and that's a long way of answering, which is, you know, how do you keep fighting? Sometimes you've got to lie down. You can't fight all the time. You have to rest. You know, I think it's Tricia Hersey talks about rest as resistance. And that's been hard for me to give myself, and yet I have to, because I also went at 1,000,000 miles an hour for so many years, and I have to rest. I have to let myself lie down and do that, but also I have to keep trying to create community. Like I've got a small group of people who meet regularly at my house who share similar passions for radical things, and it's a soul nurturing space. It's not a peer support group. But having the people who connect with our authenticity, trying to walk the same path or forge new grounds, like to come together with that, because there's an energy in that I can take back into fighting work as well. And if we've only got the fight and then rest alone, I don't know that it is sustainable.
Don't let the Victorian people kill the mood.
I'm allowing some silence in case anyone would like to add, because I think one of the things that I have found most connecting is when people have shared their vulnerability, and I have felt connected to that, and I've felt less alone because of that. And as I was going around, one of the other questions that came up was, what allows us to be vulnerable with each other, and what stops us from being able to be truly vulnerable and to be seen in the rawness of our emotions together, and how hard it is, even in this space, to feel comfortable to be able to do that.
Okay. I don't think I can do it anymore because I'm all dried out. So I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to share with you. I started having to suppress tears in the fucking opening address yesterday morning, just being in a room full of my mob. It meant, I think I might cry. But yeah, it's excruciating. It's beautiful and it's scary and it's exciting and it's wonderful. But what I would say I felt missing, and I think this is what underlines not being vulnerable in any setting, is that and I think most of us are so used to pretending and wearing the corporate mask to some degree or another, the way that we're supposed to behave in white corporate culture, that even when I'm in a room full of my people and they're saying things that just hit me right in my feels, right? I'm especially when these wonderful women were speaking this morning and the video's playing and my shoulders were going, right? So I'm suppressing sobs and I could stop the tears, but I literally thought, someone's going to see my shoulders going up and think I'm a dickhead because I'm sitting here crying. And I thought, why would I even think that? The reason that I feel so open and vulnerable and raw right now is because I know this is my mob. I know these are my people. I know that, ultimately we speak each other's language without speaking, right? We can just be silent in space together. It doesn't matter what speciality we come from, we're people who've just been so beaten down, and we know what that is, and we know how to care about other people like that. So why over and over and over again didn't I just let it go? Cry till my nose is, running and my face is bright red for the next half hour. And, frankly, I wish I had. And next time, that's my thing. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. And I encourage you to do the same.
I just love that. Thank you.
Yeah, I might mention something. So I think at the core of it, I love what you've said there, because I think at the core of it, everyone has that need to connect to their humanity, whether you're in a group of lived experience peer workers and doing the wonderful work that you do, or you are working in a big corporate. Now we, or our MD for everyone, delivers some pretty impressive cultural capability for a huge corporate in Australia, and does it with all their leadership team. And the amount of tears from people who come in a suit and by the end of it are just so vulnerable is astounding. And I think it's really broken down a lot of barriers. And it just, when you were talking, then I was just thinking to myself, people genuinely want to feel that. Doesn't matter whether you're working in this, sort of open forum. People want to feel that they belong and that they matter. and that forms part of their identity. So I was just listening to that then and thinking, wow, I think now more than ever in the world that we live in, people are looking to find greater meaning and connect with their why as well.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I'm going to hold on to that, especially in environments that don't feel as safe. Because I think you're right, actually, and that's one of the big positives, in my opinion, about COVID. And COVID was, devastating for so many reasons. But what's been good about it is everybody experienced some level of trauma and disruption. And I actually think it's been a big leveller. And it's actually opened up space for us, for lived experience folk from various backgrounds, but it's also encouraged other people who might have held those masks in place more firmly to show a bit more of a crack of who they are underneath that as well. And you're right, and I will now take responsibility for the fact that I'm not being courageous enough in creating opportunity for other people to show me their vulnerability, because I'm still so scared about not being judged and not being seen as, yeah, thank you. That's very cool.
I mean, I probably echo that sentiment, I guess, of safety and solidarity. And I guess in Western Australia, I came in after the formation of the first in Australia Mental Health Commission, with that sense of, wow, they're serious. We thought they were serious about reform. And so we've also had a bit of practice, I think, at having our hearts shattered. And so I think I would echo what everybody else is saying, that you have to find the people that you trust. So I now have 10-year relationships with people who we've shared our lives. It's not just our practice, it's our lives. And so you can safely create the spaces to be honest and to actually say how bad it is, and talk about it in a real sense. And that's that real, raw, honest, trusting relationships that we have that do sustain us. When you feel like it's down and out and everything is lost, we just find ways to keep going because we have each other, and that's what sustains me. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's something incredibly powerful about knowing that you can share your life with somebody else and that will be held in a very honoured way, and that your experience will be witnessed and nourished and taken care of. I'm going to throw to the floor soon, but I've just got one more question, and just to give you a sense of the calibre of the questions here. Indy, how are you so sexy?
That's so inappropriate. I don't feel safe, no. I put that question in the box.
You gave yourself away now.
I don't know, really. I do feel violated again by myself. It's really, now I'm crying.
We're not objectifying you. I think sexy is very much about personality, and I really feel like you have a very sexy personality. Power is sexy, and you exude power. Oh yeah, she will hit me with a stick, you're right. Just before, I do have some other questions, but I want to make sure there's opportunity for people on the floor to ask anything that might be bubbling up for anyone in particular, or if there's just a general question for anybody. Does anybody have a question that they would like to ask? Kev's making his way over.
It's a bit of a taboo topic, and it was written down in the box. What do we do if we encounter imposters in the lived experience industry?
Would anyone like to respond to that? And I'm not sure exactly what you mean by imposters, so maybe if you could you just share another sentence around exactly what you mean by imposters?
I guess inauthentic, ingenuine. I'm really worried I'm going to say the wrong thing. someone with a lived experience, a past, a criminal record, and sees an avenue to gain gainful employment and not really have their best interest in, not there for the right reason. Well, it's gainful employment, isn't it? It's going to attract. Thanks. Yes, please.
Yeah, yeah.
Save me.
Okay, so first of all, we bitch about it to other people. Like legit, that's what we do, yeah. That's one thing. But I think probably what you're speaking to that I think many of us are concerned about is when people who don't have a track record in designated roles are being put into very senior positions with a great deal of potential influence, and they don't have a fucking clue, and they shouldn't be there, and they don't understand the movement, and they're not connected to the collective thinking. They're only representing their individual perspective. What do we do in those circumstances? It's a bit like anything, you do your best with it. So for myself, what I start with is, oh, hey, so-and-so, have you had, have you got lived experience professional supervision? Did you know we did a whole bunch of stuff? Here's a list of things you can do to build your lived expertise, right? Like this is supposing that this person's already been appointed to the position. If you're prior to that, you work really, really hard to make sure that that doesn't occur, and you point to the national guidelines, you point to other policy to show why it's so important that somebody like any other, like you're not going to appoint as chief psychiatrist some snot-nosed kid who's just graduated university, right? And you shouldn't be putting people in very senior lived experience roles who are coming out for the first time with their individual lived experience. So it's common sense. So you do everything you can to stop that appointment from happening. Then if it does happen, you give them the opportunity to step up and to learn their expertise, because that's what they're lacking. So you give them strategies and steps. If that doesn't work, if you can, you put pressure on the organisation, especially depending on the level of power and influence the person has, you put pressure on the organisation. Mate, what's going on with this? This person clearly doesn't know what they're on about. And then ultimately, you bitch about it with other people because you've run out of things that you can do.
I mean, that's like, someone should have been writing all of that down. Thank you for the question. I know that they're sort of tricky things to talk about. The only thing I would add to that is that people will come to this space from lots of different backgrounds, and the criminal legal system, if anything's going to cause fucking profound distress to someone, it's going to be the criminal justice system. So if there's people coming from that space, I hope you feel welcome here. Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I was wanting to say as well, it's really important we make space for folks who've been criminalised and incarcerated as part of lived experience work. It's really critical and important, and let's face it, psych wards are essentially prisons as well, like to try and come on. We've got to be coming together. We need to come together around that. I think it's growing. My questions, which is just so mistrusting of systems, is it seems to kind of serve systems and organisations that inevitably don't want to change to not be hiring people who actually have lived experience of the thing that we're talking about. I've noticed increasingly jobs for peer workers with like mandatory qualifications in a completely different discipline, like mandatory a degree in social work or psychology. That means that you're a social worker or a psychologist. So why on earth would there be a job for a social worker that says mandatory qualifications in nursing? It doesn't even make sense, right? It's ridiculous, unless of course the service doesn't want to have peer workers who are actually going to challenge the status quo. And that's not to say you can't have done social work or psychology training and be a peer worker, but you need to still have lived experience of the space you're working in. And I don't know where you do this, you have to then go and get deprogrammed or unlearn the stuff that you learnt that is incompatible with peer work, because it's different, right? So, but we have to call out when we see that. If we see job ads, I think we should write to the organisations and say this is really inappropriate. I think that bodies like QLEWN could be doing advocacy around this and advising governments and organisations and saying these are inappropriate ways to advertise for these jobs. But I think the system doesn't want us to be who we are, right?
No, someone will correct me in the audience if I've got this wrong, but I remember reading recently that QLEWN put out a statement really sort of highlighting some of the concerns about the Cert 4 and peer work and some of the real limitations in that approach as well. So, I mean, just sound like it sounds like there's some advocacy taking place as well. Yeah.
I guess it's a systemic issue, and so I think we need to be on the front foot in addressing the question. I think over 10 years ago when the mental health bill, as it was in Western Australia, came through, we had a lived experience advisory group, and we deliberately went out to seek people with a lived experience of justice involvement and criminal records because of the intersection, obviously, with our carceral system. And so that was the lived experience that we were after. I think the broader question that we've started, again, if I can highlight some Western Australian work, and I have to give incredible kudos to some of our lived experience leaders over there, Margaret Doherty and Lynn Marboo particularly, and Amanda's been involved in a couple of front foot initiatives to ensure that, you know, as I talk about the perils of professionalisation, as it becomes a commoditised asset or an identity, a couple of things that we're developing. One is principles-based recruitment, and so Lynn Marboo has done a lot of work of mapping the lived experience workforce, which is a principles and values-based workforce, into recruitment and providing a manual for employers and employees to ensure, because it's a hell of a lot easier to screen out once people are in positions. It's a lot harder. So really the value add is in the recruitment phase. But for those people who are in the workforce at the moment, another initiative is a course that the Mental Health Commission has commissioned, and again, a slight conflict doing because Amanda and I are involved in it, but it's called Reorienting to Peer Work, and so it is for people who, we've talked about the limitations of the Cert 4. It doesn't bear any resemblance to any kind of discipline that we would call lived experience, and I'm really excited in Victoria that they are starting to do some work around disciplines. But we've developed a course around reorienting to peer work and really hammering the need for conceptual competency, not only in things like epistemic injustice and lots of other issues that we encounter in the workplace, but also fidelity to the values and the history of the movement. A lot of people come in and they don't have an understanding of the history and the grassroots, and so we just need to make sure people are connected to the movement from a head and a heart perspective as well. Yeah.
Thank you. That's incredibly powerful and so important that we have that connection to that wider body of knowledge and to the history of what we're doing. And there's something too, I think, about what it feels like to be an imposter. And I think there's people who are coming in who haven't got the history and the experience behind them, but I also am wary of what it feels like to feel like an imposter in this space, and just to consider that feeling and that experience in thinking and naming people as imposters in being in this workforce. Well,
I agree. Yeah.
Kerry, you answered one of the questions in your response, actually, which was, if we resist professionalisation, then what would it look like instead? But I just wanted to check and see if there's anything else that you would like to add to that.
I mean, I think
We couldn't hear you very well, so.
Who answers that? That was almost intimidating.
My height's not intimidating. I was just saying that Kerry pretty much answered this question, so I just wanted to see if Kerry had anything more to add on, if we don't do professionalisation, then what would it look like instead?
I could go in two directions, I think, for this one, and it's certainly an international conversation. There's been so much written around this. But I suppose I'd like to just point out the opportunity cost. is the work that Indy and others are doing in the non-system space as well, and resisting some of this work within the system. And so I think it could look like that. I mean, let's not be incurious about the possibilities of pursuing that kind of work, about the human work that is not within a system. So I think that's one possibility. I think now that I think the opening is there. We're not going to unscramble the egg, frankly. And so I don't even know that it's worth pursuing what it might look like if we don't go down this path. I think there'd be tremendous traumatic experiences for everyone all over the place, and an issue of quality, particularly because, I mean, we've probably all had this conversation now that nearly every Australian has some kind of lived experience in the mental health context as a family member or an individual. And so it's a lived experience many people have. It's an identity that many people claim. If we are going to open up the workforce, then we do need to make sure that it is a place that has quality, fidelity to the lived experience values. And I think that would be something that would be a shame to let go of.
I would like to add something. I think, yeah, professionalism was foisted on us. We didn't have a choice. Like the governments and funders and policymakers said, if you want to play with the big boys, you've got to wear the school tie, right? Like that's not something that we were given an option in. But what, many of us are still really advocating strongly for is that what does professionalism mean? So how do we define professionalism? So is professionalism everybody's got to go to university and get a tertiary degree? It can't be. It can't be, because there are people, who speak English as a second language, who have acquired brain injuries like me, who, for whom written language and written writing and whatever, you're not going to go through that system, but you can be a bloody good peer support worker. You can be incredible at other things. So we have to keep advocating for multiple pathways in everything we do. So, and being super clear about that. And I think there are many people, and myself included, every time the topic of professionalisation comes up, you've got to say yes, but, and we need all of this as well. Like, okay, sure, have your tertiary degree if that's what you need to do. Who's going to write that? Like, how are you going to get people to agree in the first place? There's so many specialised, like, you got Buckley's, mate, basically, of doing anything meaningful. Needing to accredit lived experience work is problematic. It's so problematic. It's going to remain problematic. But what's good about that is it's going to take them a long time, or they're going to do something so terrible that, we can all just laugh at it. But we just, I think, need to keep the definition of professionalism as broad as possible, and to be really clear on why it can't just look like it does for some other disciplines. Because otherwise we lose what it is that makes us us, and we lose a whole lot of really quality people who have a lot to bring to the space, who don't fit that mould. And that would be a waste of what we do.
Yeah, when I hear the sort of professionalisation conversation, my mind goes to, if I do think, and I talked about this a little bit in the talk earlier, that so many of the keys to a lot of the doors that we want to step through to change systems are held by institutions, and they've historically been the biggest barriers to change. But I think of professionalisation as a version of an institution, because you're sort of hoarding resources or power to some degree. And the biggest challenge I think you have, if you look at any major social changes, it has had to work through institutions, but where major social change has failed, the institution has become the purpose. And so people think they're working through institutions to get change, but they end up coming to work for institutions and the logic of those institutions. And it's an incredibly hard thing to balance. And so when I think about the professionalisation kind of conversation, I think I see this with the big expansion of the lived experience workforce. There's this risk that the workforce becomes the point, not the emancipatory goal that sits on the other side of that. And that's the higher the gravitational force. You know, I think you spoke about safe enough. You know, there's certain to change systems of power. There is certain degrees of unsafety that are going to be inherent at the sort of various pointy ends of that. And if we make sort of professionalisation or the way we try to construct the workforce and the experience of going through the sector as being either just about professionalisation for its own sake or safety, there'll be no forward inertia to actually change the system as well. And so it's a very hard thing a hard balance to strike in my experience.
I'm not sure if I'll add to this. This is so interesting to me, and also I was sitting here thinking, I don't want to be in this conversation, which I guess, you know, I kind of made clear. You know, like I'm trying to be outside of that. I don't want to see. I hear you can't unscramble the egg, and I feel such sadness about professionalising something that for me should be, you know, rooted in community and values and I don't know, being beautiful fucking human beings with each other, and they're sort of professionalising that feels yuck. That's a really shit way of saying it. I think it is really dangerous. I think about so much of the stuff I saw, the terrible advocacy by nursing unions that was about upholding stuff like seclusion and restraint. It was about protecting their power and their workforce, and there is a great risk for lived experience workers to do the same kinds of shit things that come out of nursing and social work and psychiatry, which I think is what you were saying, Simon, where it becomes about us. And I wanted to share, I wasn't sure if I should share this, but I will, because it popped into my mind that in work I've been doing in, I don't even like to call it work so much these days. I keep trying to find new words. In being with folks in the Alta Soon NAM group that we hosted for 14 months, we had no funding, no organisation. We just turned up and did that with folks who were suicidal. We're like, come, we got a space for free in an anarchist building, which was great because the rules of using the space were no cops were allowed on the premises. And we're like, well, that's perfect for psych survivors. Everyone's happy. But in that group, and I also did some facilitating with suicide narratives on Ghana country. And do you know what, in those spaces, hearing a lot of consumer survivors talking about shitty things that clinicians have done to them, we hear that, right? We hear that a lot. Just as often, what I was hearing over the last couple of years was people talking about, I hate to say this, but I need to say it, is shitty things that peer workers have done to them. I never used to hear that. I used to hear that. And it breaks my heart, but it's all these questions we've been answering are connected, and it's really important to hear, and what can we do to make sure we don't, and I've kind of left, but I'm still connected, I'm still doing peer stuff here, but if we're in the institutions and professionalisation is growing in this stuff, how do we not become the oppressors? Because that's already happening for folks, that's already happened for many people. What do we do about that? I don't know. Like my answer is not everyone's answer. I know my answer is get out, abscond, grow community, destroy the colony. And then I sit with people and I have this same struggle. How do you pay your rent? What do we do? I don't know. Sorry.
I think this is a battle that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have been, have had to face for years and years. Connecting to community and keeping that connection strong keeps you grounded, keeps you centred, and keeps you looking towards the goal that you're trying to achieve. There is no way around working with government. We have to do it. It's the only way that we can move forward, but how we move forward with government is on us. So, it is about coming together and joining both ways. There are going to be things that you have to compromise on both sides, but it comes down to education. It's taken us years to get cultural awareness training into organisations for them to understand our perspectives. having them understand those perspectives then allows us a seat at the table to have that conversation from where we're coming from, so we come together. And it has changed how policies are done, how strategies are made, how work happens in the communities. So like now more than ever, there's more community consultation with Indigenous communities around things that affect Indigenous communities. Whereas 20, 30 years ago, government would just come in and tell us what they need, what they wanted to do, because that's what they thought was the right thing. It's a long journey. It's a hard journey. But you have everyone in this room here with you to support you through that. Remember that you're not alone, that you don't stand, like even if you do feel alone, like you have people in your corner. Connect to that community. That will keep you grounded.
Thank you. Beautiful message of collective solidarity and also driving what is already happening. So if professionalisation is happening, how can we drive it as much as possible ourselves?
Can I just, and also a good reminder that, you know, the longest continuing culture in the world has been doing this on this land for, and surviving on this land for, you know, longer than anyone else. And just there's so much for us to have some humility and learn from. Yeah.
Absolutely. I have one more question for you, and it's just a quick whip around because I want to hear from everybody. But as I've spoken to people, lots of people mentioned your presentations as highlights. So I'm curious what your highlight of the conference has been. Who would like to start?
I'll start.
Perfect.
Mine's actually been just being able to be in a room with so many people that have a shared vision and that are on this journey of lived and living experience, because it's made such a huge impact in my life, and I never thought that that would be a societal thing to happen. And to see this many people sitting in a room that are just as passionate about it as me is so rewarding, and it has filled my cup like right to the top. So that's been the biggest highlight for me, just meeting so many amazing people and having the opportunity to share our story with you as well.
I'd agree with that. And I think for me, knowing that I was coming to be with friends, right? I've stepped out and been more honest about parts of myself that I've kept hidden more, or not kept hidden, but haven't felt safe to share. And so I've spoken a lot about being a person with autism, having a brain injury, you know, like the different aspects of the trauma history and all that, and how that impacts me to this day, like how it impacts me on this stage in this moment. And feeling free to come as my whole self to anything is just such an extraordinary gift. Like, so it's being in a room with people where I can, you know, talk about spirituality, where I can sing a mantra. So the day, you know, we were dancing. We were dancing to Push It by Salt and Pepper earlier. We were doing Qigong, and it's like by extension, like when you know you're in a community of people who are like you, it's like this permission to really be seen and to show up fully. And again, like particularly with the, you know, the brain stuff that I've got going on, that is so rare for me, even in my own family, like people I've known my whole life, friends. It's so hard, like I've got so many barriers to feeling okay about being who I am and bringing my whole self. So to do that publicly in a room full of like more than 100 people is just phenomenal. And I think it's a testament to this community, you know, that it makes us feel that way. Yeah.
I think I'm going to say my highlight has been you lot, has been, and it's where I've spent most of the time. I kept feeling guilty. I was like, I'm not sitting, like, I'm sorry to all my, I didn't hear everyone's talks. I didn't go to many workshops. I've spent most of the time at this summit in the hallway or the courtyard, sitting with people, sharing stories and crying and hugging. But actually, like, it's just been divine. It's been really precious. I feel like I've just been making heart connections. And quite a number of people have shared really big things, and that's felt amazing. So I don't quite have the right words. I feel really moved. This has been a really moving couple of days, and I feel gifted from that. So thank you to everyone who came up and shared of your heart and soul and sat together, and it was pretty special.
I'll go. I think it's going to be this. This is the work. I mean, this is the presentations are wonderful. The workshops are amazing and stimulating. But the work is the connection, and that's really the defining feature of the lived experience movement. Is connectedness, authentic connection, and so it's all of those opportunities to be with the tribe and to connect with our humanity, and that's what happens in the breaks and in those moments. And so for me, that's been the highlight as well. And I think because we're such a large, vast, disconnected country, these opportunities are so precious and so rare, and they will fill our cups going back out into that world, and they do for me. So that's my highlight as well, is just connecting with the tribe.
Thank you.
Just listening, that's amazing. No, I think it's like looking behind. The feeling that I've had coming to the conference is, it's like looking behind a door and going, wow, this is amazing energy and momentum that exists in the sector. I think, yes, it's still an emerging field in terms of notoriety within sort of broader-based medical settings, if you like, but I think that you would be surprised at how much support this type of workforce would get, even just in terms of some of the discussions I've had with people who've had no idea about peer workforce or lived experience. When I've spoken to them about it, they feel like, that's amazing. Can you tell me more about it? I will after the conference. And I think, as I said before, I think now more than ever, people want to hear about some of this amazing work. People want to connect to their humanity. And we get, the privilege of seeing that in lots of different settings as well. And you start to see, wow, we're not actually all that different. We're all, at the heart of it, doing our best and trying to connect and belong. So, yeah, I think that's been the highlight.
Simon, I think you have the last word.
Oh, no, yeah, that's right.
Typical white man.
Is someone going to mention Mandy's singing last night, though, as one of the highlights? Because I think we should.
Yes, please. I wasn't.
Oh, you weren't
So
there.
please.
I just want to also give a nod to Amanda singing last night as a highlight.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I mean, I think, I would echo a lot of what people have said here in terms of their highlights and the sort of connection and just the good opportunities to meet, some people I haven't actually met in person before, and that's been really nice too. So that's definitely been a highlight. I feel like, certainly a highlight for me was yesterday. I was fortunate to go to the LGBTIQA+ affirming care session by Brodie, and I learnt a lot there, and I also saw a lot of people that were keen to learn a lot there. And I guess I just want to highlight that because it's a pretty tough time in Queensland at the moment, and so if there's if there's maybe one thing you can do coming out of this, it's maybe learn about that, because there's decisions that have been made that can be reversed with enough support, and And if we're going to talk about human rights and social justice, I think we can affirm, the rights of everyone in our community, including trans and gender diverse or non-binary folks. So that's a highlight for me. Yeah.
So out of time, so I just wanted to thank you all for sharing and for being open and vulnerable and beautiful humans. Thank you. Oh, here's some trophies we prepared earlier.
We'll eat them in front of you. Yeah. In silence.
All right, so our 2 days is all but drawing to a close. We've got a couple of other things we need to do. Could I get Deb Carlton to come up, please, just for a moment?
Do we leave?
Oh, yes, sorry. And you guys can leave the stage if you'd like to. Yeah.
I just wanted to take a second to say that, today has been fantastic, or the last 2 days have been fantastic, and so many different ideas and everything. So Mind has decided to extend for another week the Stratford Scholarship. And for those that don't know, the Stratford Scholarship is a $10,000 scholarship for emerging leaders that have innovative and transformational projects that they would like to get funded. So you can go to Mind's website and click on the Stratford Scholarship, or on Facebook. There's a link there under their Facebook page. And so it's not a lot to put the your first expression of interest in, and then we can take it from there. But because this has been so creative and energetic, we really just wanted to leave it open for another week. So put your applications in.
All right, a couple other things. We've got a raffle. For those people that saw the people on the QLEWN stand out the front and made an attempt to win a 5-year membership for QLEWN, right, there's not many tickets in here, so it's going to be pretty easy to win, I think.
Oh, do I get to draw it?
And,
this is exciting.
And Helena's going to draw it.
Oh. Okay, it's a red ticket. A red ticket. It's got a name on it, but I'll make it more exciting. It's a red ticket I don't know what that 03. Otherwise, it's Kev Stevenson.
All right. Okay. Just before everybody gets up to leave, we do have afternoon tea at 4 o'clock, which I'm thinking is probably about 11 seconds away. Aside from all the work that's gone into this by Amanda and the volunteers that we've all tripped over during the course of the last 2 days, we've had a pretty amazing event coordination team behind us, and that's the team from Mask. You would have seen them walking around looking fairly worried most of the time, but basically making it work okay. So if I could have Tamara and Dom come out onto the stage for me for a moment, please. Please put your hands together for these guys. They've done an amazing job over the last 2 days.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And then we do have another little gift, I guess. Just a gift of appreciation to someone that's very special to all of us, and particularly those of us who are on the management committee of QLEWN. and she's going to kill me in a minute, but that's okay too. I'd like Amanda to come up on the stage, please.
This is what happens when I give you the credit card.
Yes, she did.
No expense spared.
Thank you, everybody.
No? Okay. This microphone, there's obviously something about it. Everybody runs away. Now, the last thing for today, before we get too carried away with afternoon tea, and it's all set up the back there, we've got something called the call of action. All right, so a number of our members are in this room, but there's also a lot of people who have been given a temporary membership to QLEWN so that we could process your I guess, being here over this time. Now, that temporary membership actually runs out in March, which means that we would really like you to jump onto our website and actually join QLEWN, because together we can do a lot. If there's only a few of us, it's just that little bit harder. It's not expensive, and there's a lot of benefits to being part of this, or formally part of this little community that we have. So please jump on the website, join up, and yeah, hopefully we'll see everybody around. The other thing that we'd like to do also is we've got a whole bunch of opportunities to join our management committee. The formal positions are all filled, but we are in a situation where we'd like input from other people. So if you have a little bit of time spare, or think that this might be something you'd like to get involved in, please talk to one of us, and we'd be more than happy to kind of give you a bit of a heads up about how we work, what we do, kind of requirements and all that sort of thing. It's, as you can probably tell, it's a great organisation. Those of us that are in it are very, very involved in it, very proud of it. And realistically, it is our voice. So it would be great to have everybody in this room a member of QLEWN. So on that note, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for spending the last 2 days with us. Thank you for all your input, because it is very valuable. It will get seen, it will get heard, and it will get actioned on. So travel safely going home. It was wonderful to meet those people that we've met this time around, and we look forward to seeing you when we do this again in about a year's time. Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay. It's on. Sorry, everybody. Could I have all the QLEWN volunteers come up onto the stage, please, so that we can get a photo for prosperity, if that would be okay?